welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. I'm Samantha here with your Friday Five, and today we're going to be talking about occupational therapy. Occupational therapy can be used with many different populations, but obviously we're going to be talking about using it with your autistic or ADHD kid. So we'll break down what occupational therapy is, how it helps, and some common therapy goals. I have had extensive experience with occupational therapy as a music therapist. I've co-treated with them. I used to do a group with an occupational therapist where I provided the music and she planned all the motor skills and just the activities that we did. And then my kids have also been in occupational therapy for many years. When my son was about he always had sensory struggles. He was very sensory avoidant, and it caused a lot of issues in his life. So we saw an occupational therapy assessment, and then that occupational therapist worked with him where he was able to actually tolerate some of the things, and it didn't quite give him the same thing that it did before, where he could tolerate things instead of just melting down every time he touched something that he didn't really like. In fact, when we started, he couldn't really touch anything other than like smooth surfaces or anything that was dirty. He couldn't touch it. He didn't like being in mud. He didn't like touching shaving cream. He didn't like any of that. And then after occupational therapy, he actually got in the bathtub and he asked for shaving cream and he asked to play with it. And I was like, what is happening? So it was really cool to see something that he didn't like before to where he actually liked playing with it and he liked going outside and getting muddy and all of that. And then as he got older, we got occupational therapy again, where he needed some help with emotional regulation. And so he started getting occupational therapy for that. And my other son and my daughter also got occupational therapy for that. So, what is occupational therapy? It helps kids build skills to participate in everyday occupations, which this isn't a job. This is just daily living skills, like daily tasks, like dressing, playing, eating, and learning. It focuses on independence, motor skills, regulation, sensory needs, and routines. And the therapist looks at the whole child. This is my favorite part of occupational therapy. They look at the body, brain, environment, and emotional state and address all of those together as one because all those things are interacting together to make your child who they are. So some examples of what occupational therapists can do with kids with autism includes helping regulate sensory input. So like my son, the occupational therapist was able to help him regulate the sensory input to where he actually liked touching that stuff, where before he was very avoidant and would have a meltdown if anything touched him. And then they can also help with building motor planning and coordination, improve daily living skills and transitions. So if your child has a really hard time transitioning, they can help with that. And then they also support emotional regulation through movement, routines, and visual tools. If your kid has ADHD, occupational therapists can help with building impulse control through games and structure. They can teach strategies to stay focused and organized. They strengthen fine motor skills, which is often affected by hyperactivity. And then they encourage regulation through sensory breaks, movement, and timers. Some common goals for neurodivergent kids include sensory regulation, such as tolerating textures, managing noise, or meeting movement needs in safe ways. So if your child is sensory seeking all the time, where they're moving all the time and just needing to get that input in, your occupational therapist can help you understand how to best serve your child to get the input that they need. And then they also work on fine motor skills, holding a pencil, using utensils, buttoning shirts, those kinds of things. They work on gross motor coordination, so balance, body awareness, playground skills, executive functioning, following multi-step directions, starting tasks, organizing materials, things like that. And then they also work on self-care and independence. So brushing your teeth, dressing, feeding, all those things. And they also work on emotional regulation. So using tools to calm down, recognizing emotions, and increased flexibility in routines. That's one thing that my kids are really working on is recognizing their emotions and then increasing their flexibility. And I just want to stress that occupational therapy is not about fixing kids. It's about giving them tools to thrive in the world. It's like when my son went to occupational therapy as a toddler, it wasn't about fixing him. It was helping him be in the world and not being on guard all the time or not having a meltdown all the time and being uncomfortable all the time in the world that he had to live in. It was about helping him thrive in that world rather than just fixing him because kids with autism and ADHD don't need to be fixed. They just need the proper supports to help them navigate the world. And then every plan is personalized, it's child-centered. So every plan is personalized, just like every brain is different. So if your child struggles with daily routines, emotional regulation, or sensory processing, I would definitely look into getting an occupational therapy assessment and make sure that you get a good occupational therapist. I did have my son go to one occupational therapist who was not the right fit. It's not saying that she wasn't the right fit for other kids, but she was not the right fit for my son. She said that he needed behavioral therapy before she could work with him because he refused to do everything that she asked him to do. He refused to do everything that she asked him to do because his sensory system was so overwhelmed and he was so overstimulated that he went into shutdown. And so when we found another occupational therapist that was a good fit for him, she was able to help him navigate that so that he didn't shut down and he was able to do what he needed to do without being constantly overwhelmed.